Our guest today is Managing Director at the Asian Development Bank, and Rajat says it's not an issue of shortages of rice, it's an issue of pricing. Rajat, good morning to you. So you live and work in Manila, along with all your great colleagues at the ADB, so you're pretty much ear to the ground in terms of what's going on there in that great rice importing nation. When Gloria Arroyo and other officials say that hoarding is getting rampant, is she right?
I think hoarding in localized places is possible, and it's normal human tendencies to do that. But I'm more concerned when countries are banning exports, because that is a form of national hoarding. I think we need to focus on a very important fact that in Asia, supply is not the main constraint, but the huge price increases are. That has a very massive impact on the poor, and we need to focus on the huge price increases we've seen in recent months.
Well, the price increases have nothing to do with supply. We've got mountains and mountains of the grain. The harvests are good, and yet prices are going up, and people are up in arms.
No.
Has there been some policy failure? No.
I think supplies have been a bit low. Stocks are the lowest in decades. But what I mean is there isn't a crisis of not having enough supply in Asia as a whole. The demand has increased because of rising incomes. People have consumed more and are consuming higher end of the food chain, i.e. meat or dairy products, which require greater grains for feedstock. There has been also a supply constraint, drought in Australia, cyclones in Bangladesh, pestilence in Vietnam. So supply has been down, but the crisis is not of having enough stocks. The crisis is that the price increases, fueled by oil price increases, fueled by biofuel subsidies, fueled by rising demand, have all converged to make price rise a very serious issue in Asia.
So is this an aberration that will be self-resolving, or is there something urgent that needs to be done in terms of policy on the part of affected countries?
I think there is a cyclical factor which will work itself out as you get the next crop in, but there are structural issues along the lines of huge demand, price increases in fuel, which feeds into fertilizer. And yes, I think there will have to be things the governments will have to do, but I would hope very much it will not be trade measures or price control measures, because they in the long run tend to be actually counterproductive. What I hope very much is that the governments will focus on maybe targeted income support for the very poor, the vulnerable who need support to protect them from the huge price of rice increases, but also focus on getting some distortions in the market. For example, through biofuel subsidies being removed in the West, through getting the Doha round started. I think that would be a very important development, and investment in agriculture infrastructure, physical research work, extension services, which I think need to be increased.
How do the current topics du jour, the current basically the top line items, converge with the ADB's efforts as we're into the second quarter right now? I pulled up a few figures here, and this is just trivia, I guess, but back in '06, which is not really relevant to now, but at that point you okayed $7.5 billion US in loans, $250 million in technical assistance. Now with inflation, now with escalating food prices threatening to topple social cohesion in many cases, is that budget going to be escalated itself dramatically?
Yes, Bernie. Last year, we lent $10 billion to our member countries. This year, it will be about the same level. Basically, there is a huge demand for support in the region. Of course, the recent price increases in rice will exacerbate that situation, and we will be ready to support our member countries as needed.
And that'll take the form of what? The usual instruments, or is the ADB starting to deploy some new methodology in dealing with the issues at hand?
No, it will be our usual loans and technical assistance grants, but we will be prepared to give budget support to governments who might need it, because the fiscal deficit will obviously worsen if they have to give targeted income support for the poor. But we think it's very important that the governments do that. About 600 million poor in Asia, another 600 million or so just over what we call the poverty line of $1 a day. So you've got about a billion point two people who are vulnerable to the stresses of price increases in rice. So we will provide support to the governments who need to boost up their budget for supporting the poor and the near poor.
Rajat, always great talking to you. You have a good time while you're there in Singapore, and safe trip back to Manila. Rajat Naj, Managing Director.